Seattle Seahawks trampled the New England Patriots in Super Bowl 60, but the postgame chatter barely touched football. Fans and pundits argued about anthems, halftime, commercials, and what the whole spectacle said about America. For better or worse, the Super Bowl serves as the premier civic liturgy of the American empire, a night when strangers share the same screen and offices share the same small talk. When that ritual becomes another front in the culture war, the country loses one more place to breathe. Look, families fight, politics, they intrude, and resentments pile up. But holidays still force a pause. Thanksgiving and Christmas push people back to the same table, reminding them that argument can't become the relationship. When even the ritual itself turns into the argument, when Thanksgiving and Christmas are no longer about gratitude or celebrating the birth of Christ, but rather who can win a political debate, the family slides from conflict towards a rupture. A nation works the same way. Shared ceremonies don't solve deep disagreements, but they do keep disagreements from becoming total separation. Americans rarely stop living their separate lives to watch the same thing at the same time. Streaming splinters the audience. Social media isolates communities. Even big films and best-selling books now fall into ideological silos. The Super Bowl remains one of the few national events that still compels common attention. People who even hate sports tune in for the ads so they can follow the conversation at work the next day. A shared celebration, however frivolous, still binds people who otherwise share little else in common. This year's Super Bowl looks like a country at war with itself. The broadcast opened with two national anthems, the familiar Francis Scott Key Standard and the newer Black National Anthem that appears at more NFL events each season. The league has leaned hard into woke activism, from corporate rituals to social campaigns, and it rarely hides the moral it wants viewers to absorb. Two anthems signal two constituencies. Two constituencies begin to behave like two different nations. The halftime show only sharpened that divide. The NFL chose Bad Bunny, a Puerto Rican artist who performs almost entirely in Spanish, and the set centered on Hispanic identity. The stage recreated a bodega, complete with an EBT welcome neon sign. You really can't make stuff like that up. The performance leaned into sexual provocation, with dancers simulating sex acts and two gay guys grinding on each other for shock and applause. The show ended with performers hoisting foreign flags, a tableau that read less like cultural flair and more like a victory lap, as in, "We've conquered you now, take that." A large portion of the audience just wasn't buying what the league was selling. Ratings suggest that many viewers turned off the Super Bowl during the set. Some did so out of prudishness, others did it out of irritation with the message, others were just confused. If you look at the live crowd, they couldn't have seemed more bored about what was going on. Either way, the halftime show didn't function as a shared moment, it became a sorting mechanism. Turning Point USA offered a competing halftime show featuring country artists singing about America and Jesus Christ. The stream broke records and reportedly became YouTube's largest live stream. The accomplishment deserves major credit, but the very need for it should worry anyone who wants a coherent nation. Instead of one shared celebration, Americans built parallel ceremonies, then congratulated themselves for avoiding each other. The commercials followed the same pattern. One spot from a mortgage lender portrayed a family of color moving into a mostly white neighborhood and encountering casual racism until they instruct the residents on diversity and inclusion. The ad didn't wink, it preached. Another strange commercial, backed by Patriots owner and Jewish billionaire Robert Kraft, aimed to address rising anti-Semitism. It showed a Jewish student harassed in a school hallway as classmates, all white of course, mocked him and stuck a note reading "Dirty Jew" to his backpack. The boy reaches his locker where a black student offers solidarity based on their shared experience of being hated by whites. The ad then unveils a Blue Square social media campaign modeled on the Black Square campaign that followed George Floyd's death in 2020. NFL owners didn't back away from the woke script. They turned the dial higher. The next day, I went to my barber, and he described the shift in real time. Small talk drives that job. For most of his life, the Monday after the Super Bowl brought lively chatter about the best players and the funniest ads. This year, customers wanted to talk about politics. They explained about the anthem, the halftime show, the messaging, the moral scolding. The game itself barely came up. Friendly banter about the MVP and next season's prospects gave way to arguments about what kind of country this still is. That entire conversation really captured the larger problem. Conservatives and liberals increasingly inhabit different worlds. They share geography, but they don't share a premise. They don't share authorities. They don't share the same media diet, the same moral language, or the same sense of what counts as a fact. When they occupy the same room, they talk past each other. When they can avoid the room, they do so. The old civic fracture ran along a map, north and south. The new fracture runs through families, workplaces, churches, and neighborhoods. The country didn't divide into north and south. It divided into competing moral nations layered on top of the same territory. Each tribe builds its own institutions, its own entertainment, and its own narrative, while increasingly building also their own rituals. No stable regime can endure that kind of division indefinitely. One side will eventually impose dominance on the other, with power used to punish dissent and enforce conformity. Or the country will choose some form of national divorce, formal or informal, with communities separating as much as law and logistics allow. The Super Bowl didn't create this crisis, it revealed it. A shared civic ritual lets people practice unity without requiring uniformity. Americans once used the game as a harmless excuse to share food, laugh at ads, and pretend, at least for a night, that they still belonged to one people. This year, the country used the game more to rehearse separation. A nation that can't share a football game probably can't share much else for very long. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and click like, and if you haven't clicked subscribe, now is a great time to do so. If you'd like to get these broadcasts as podcasts, you need to subscribe to the MacIntyre Show on your favorite podcast platform, and when you do, leave a rating or review. It really helps with the algorithm magic. And if you are listening on the podcast, but you haven't subscribed on something like YouTube, guys, I would really appreciate if you take the time to do that. The podcast keeps growing, but YouTube is really trying to tank my numbers, and so it would be fantastic if you'd help out by making sure you're subscribed in both places. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter or Gab or Substack or Instagram, if you'd like to get this show on Rumble or Odyssey, the links to do all of that are down below in the description. And of course, you can read all of my columns and watch all of my episodes over at The Blaze. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll talk to you next time.